The monastery world of Serenitas hung in space like a meditation made manifest, its surface covered in crystalline spires that caught starlight and transformed it into something approaching music. Dr. Alex Morrison pressed his face to the transport shuttle's viewport, watching the ancient structures grow larger as they descended through atmosphere that shimmered with harmonics no human ear was designed to fully appreciate. "First time to Serenitas?" asked the pilot, a grizzled trader whose ship had seen more star systems than Alex had seen research papers. "First time anywhere this far from Earth, actually," Alex admitted, checking his equipment cases for the 15th time. "I'm here to study the linguistic archives. Apparently they have texts that predate most known civilizations." The pilot snorted. "Good luck getting the monks to share anything interesting. They're polite enough, but they guard their secrets like a dragon guards treasure. And watch out for the silent girl." "Silent girl?" "One of their charges. Pretty little thing with the pointy ears, but she's never spoken a word. Some say she's blessed, others say she's cursed. Either way, she has a habit of appearing wherever visitors least expect her." Alex nodded absently, his attention already shifting to the research ahead. As a xenolinguist, he'd spent his career studying how different species developed communication, but the texts from Serenitas promised something unprecedented, evidence of a proto-language that had influenced dozens of worlds across the galaxy. The shuttle touched down in a crystalline landing bay that hummed with welcoming harmonics. Alex gathered his equipment and followed the pilot toward the monastery's main entrance, where a figure in flowing robes waited to greet them. "Dr. Morrison," the monk said, his elongated ears marking him as one of the ethereal order. "I am Brother Thane. We have prepared quarters for your stay and arranged access to our archives." "I appreciate the hospitality," Alex replied, shouldering his gear. "I promise to handle your texts with appropriate respect." Brother Thane smiled, but there was something in his expression that suggested Alex didn't yet understand what appropriate respect might mean in this place. "Come. I will show you to your chambers, and then perhaps you would like to see the archives before the evening harmonics begin." They walked through corridors that seemed to grow from the living rock, their walls embedded with crystal formations that pulsed gently with internal light. The effect was like moving through the inside of a geode, beautiful and alien and somehow alive. The crystals, Alex observed, pausing to examine a particularly intricate formation. "They're responding to something. Emotional resonance." "Among other things," Brother Thane replied cryptically. "The crystals are sensitive to many forms of energy. They help us maintain the peace necessary for our contemplations." As they rounded a corner, Alex caught a glimpse of movement, a figure in simple robes disappearing through a doorway with fluid grace. He had only a moment to register elongated ears, long dark hair, and eyes that seemed to hold depths beyond their years. Was that Lyrian? Brother Thane confirmed. "She often observes new arrivals. Curiosity, we believe, though she expresses it differently than most." The pilot mentioned she doesn't speak. Brother Thane's expression grew thoughtful. "Lyrian has been with us since childhood. She has never spoken aloud, yet she communicates in ways that often surpass mere words. We consider her silence a form of sacred mystery." They reached Alex's quarters, a simple chamber with a window overlooking crystal gardens that stretched toward distant mountains. The view was breathtaking, but Alex found his attention drawn back to the corridor where the girl had appeared. "Brother Thane," he said carefully, "would it be possible to meet Lyrian formally? If she's interested in visitors, perhaps she'd be curious about my research." The monk's ears flickered with what might have been amusement. "Lyrian makes her own decisions about interactions. If she wishes to meet you, she will find a way to make that known." As if summoned by their conversation, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. Brother Thane looked toward the window, where crystal formations in the garden had begun to pulse with synchronized light. "Interesting," he murmured. "The crystals rarely respond so immediately to new arrivals. Perhaps your presence here is more significant than we anticipated." Alex set down his equipment, watching the light patterns dance across the garden like a visual symphony. Somewhere in those patterns, he sensed, lay answers to questions he hadn't even thought to ask yet. And somewhere in this monastery of silent contemplation and ancient wisdom, a girl who had never spoken was already changing the course of his research in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. The archives of the ethereal order defied every expectation Alex had developed about ancient libraries. Instead of dusty scrolls and crumbling codices, he found himself in a crystalline chamber where texts were stored as harmonic patterns within living crystal matrices. The knowledge wasn't written so much as sung into existence, each manuscript a frozen melody waiting for the right resonance to release its contents. Remarkable, Alex murmured, running specialized scanners over a crystal formation that Brother Thane had identified as containing third-era linguistic protocols. The information density is extraordinary. A single crystal could hold more data than our entire university library. Knowledge stored in crystal endures, Brother Thane explained. It does not decay or become corrupted. But it requires understanding to access properly. Alex was beginning to suspect that understanding meant something more complex than academic credentials. Every time he attempted to interface his equipment with the crystal archives, the results were frustratingly incomplete, like trying to read a book with half the words missing. There must be a key, he muttered, adjusting his harmonic analysis software for the 20th time. Some kind of resonance frequency that unlocks the full content. A soft sound made him turn around. Standing in the archive entrance, silhouetted against the corridor's gentle luminescence, was the girl from yesterday, Lyrian. She moved into the chamber with steps so quiet they barely disturbed the crystal harmonics, her large violet eyes taking in his equipment with obvious curiosity. "Hello," Alex said softly, not wanting to startle her. "I'm Alex. I'm here studying your people's languages." Lyrian tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him feel like she was reading something written on his soul. After a moment, she approached the crystal formation he'd been working with and placed her hand gently on its surface. Immediately, the archive chamber blazed with light as the crystal responded to her touch. Harmonic patterns flowed through the air like visible music, and Alex's scanners began registering coherent data streams for the first time since his arrival. "How did you?" he began, then stopped as Lyrian turned toward him with an expression that clearly said, "Watch and learn." She moved to another crystal, then another, each touch causing cascades of information to flow through the chamber's resonance network. Alex watched in amazement as symbols and patterns he'd been struggling to decode suddenly made perfect sense, their meanings becoming clear as the crystals sang their stored knowledge into the air. "You understand them," he said with growing wonder. "You can read the ancient texts." Lyrian nodded, then gestured toward his equipment with a question in her eyes. "You want to see what I've been trying to do?" Alex interpreted. At her nod, he showed her the linguistic analysis programs, the pattern recognition software, the harmonic interpreters he'd spent years developing. Her reaction was immediate and unmistakable, delight. She clapped her hands silently, her eyes lighting up with the joy of someone discovering a kindred spirit. Then she moved to his primary scanner and began making subtle adjustments to its harmonic calibration, her fingers dancing over controls she shouldn't have been able to understand. The results were instantaneous. Data flowed across Alex's screens in torrents of perfectly organized information, linguistic patterns that showed clear connections between the Serenitas archives and similar symbol systems found on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. "This is incredible," Alex breathed, watching linguistic evolution charts form on his display. These patterns suggest a common origin for languages that developed light years apart. But that would mean... He looked up to find Lyrian watching him with an expression of patient expectation, as if she was waiting for him to reach a conclusion she'd arrived at long ago. "You already know, don't you?" he said quietly. "You know what these connections mean." Lyrian moved to a crystal formation near the chamber center, one that Alex's equipment had registered as completely inert. When she touched it, the entire archive filled with a harmony so complex and beautiful that it brought tears to his eyes. In that harmony, Alex heard something impossible, the echo of voices from across the galaxy, different species and different worlds, all singing variations of the same cosmic song. The linguistic patterns he'd been studying weren't just records of communication. They were fragments of something much larger, a galactic consciousness that had once connected civilizations across unimaginable distances. Lyrian turned back to him, and in her eyes he saw a question that made his heart race with possibility and terror in equal measure. Now that you understand what was lost, are you ready to help me find it again? Around them, the crystals pulsed with anticipation, as if the archives themselves were holding their breath waiting for his answer. Alex spent the next several days learning to work with Lyrian in a partnership that transcended conventional communication. She would guide him to specific crystal formations, her touch unlocking harmonic patterns that his equipment could then analyze and decode. In return, he shared his linguistic theories and showed her how modern technology could map the connections between ancient symbol systems. Look at this, Alex said during one of their sessions, projecting a galactic map that showed linguistic convergence points across dozens of star systems. Every civilization that developed these symbol patterns experienced some kind of cultural flowering, followed by a period of decline and isolation. Lyrian studied the display with focused intensity, then moved to a crystal he'd never seen her access before. When she touched it, the chamber filled with a harmony so sad and beautiful that Alex felt his heart break without understanding why. The harmonic pattern that emerged told a story of connection and loss, civilizations that had once shared knowledge and consciousness across the galaxy, linked by harmonics that transcended space and time. But something had broken the connections, leaving each world isolated with only fragments of what had once been a cosmic symphony. They were all connected, Alex whispered, understanding flooding through him like revelation. The ancient civilizations weren't separate developments, they were part of a galactic consciousness network. Lyrian nodded, then gestured toward his harmonic analysis equipment with an expression that clearly meant, try it. Try what? Alex asked, but he was already adjusting his scanners to match the harmonic frequencies the crystals had revealed. When he activated the modified harmonics, the effect was immediate and overwhelming. Every crystal in the archive chamber began to resonate in perfect synchronization, creating patterns of light and sound that seemed to reach beyond the monastery and out into space itself. Alex. Brother Thane's voice echoed through the chamber as he rushed in, his usual calm replaced by obvious concern. What are you doing? The entire monastery is responding to these harmonics. We're reactivating the network, Alex said, his voice filled with wonder and growing alarm as he realized the magnitude of what they triggered. The ancient connection protocols, they're still functional. Throughout the monastery, crystal formations blazed with awakening energy. The gentle harmonics that had maintained peaceful contemplation for centuries were being overwhelmed by frequencies designed to reach across galactic distances. Monks hurried through corridors as their sacred spaces responded to energies they didn't understand. You must stop this, Brother Thane insisted. These energies are beyond our ability to control. But Alex found himself looking at Lyrian, who stood at the chamber's center with tears streaming down her face and an expression of profound recognition. The awakening harmonics swirled around her like a visible manifestation of destiny, and for the first time since he'd met her, she opened her mouth as if to speak. I can't stop it, Alex said, his equipment readings showing harmonic cascades building toward some kind of critical threshold. The network is trying to re-establish connections that have been dormant for millennia. If we interrupt the process now, we might lose the chance forever. The crystal formations reached critical resonance, their harmonics building toward something that felt both wonderful and terrifying. Alex watched his instruments register frequencies that shouldn't have been possible, patterns of energy that suggested consciousness on a scale no single mind could comprehend. At the center of it all, Lyrian stood with her arms outstretched toward the blazing crystals, her lips moving in silent preparation for words that would either save them all or transform them beyond recognition. The monastery trembled with awakening power, and Alex realized that his research had become something far more significant than academic study. He had accidentally triggered the resurrection of a galactic consciousness network, and the only person who knew how to complete the process was a girl who had been preparing her entire life to speak the words that would reshape the galaxy. Lyrian, he whispered, his voice barely audible above the crystal harmonics. What do you need me to do? She turned toward him with eyes that held the depth of ancient wisdom and the joy of long-awaited reunion, and Alex knew that whatever she was about to say would change everything. The central temple of the monastery had become a cathedral of light and sound as every crystal formation responded to the awakening harmonics. Energy cascaded through the crystalline architecture like visible music, creating patterns so complex and beautiful that they seemed to exist at the intersection of art and physics. Alex stood at the chamber's heart, his equipment overwhelmed by readings that transcended conventional measurement, while monks gathered at the temple's edges with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "The resonance is building beyond safe parameters," Brother Thane called over the harmonic crescendo. "Dr. Morrison, if this continues, the feedback could shatter every crystal formation in the monastery." Alex watched his scanners register energy patterns that shouldn't have been possible, harmonics that seemed to reach beyond the physical realm and into something approaching pure consciousness. "I don't think we can stop it now," he replied, his voice filled with wonder and growing concern. "The network is trying to complete a connection sequence that's been interrupted for thousands of years." At the temple's center, Lyrian stood with tears streaming down her face, her entire body trembling as she faced the blazing crystal formations. The harmonics swirled around her like a storm of living music, and Alex could see that she was fighting some internal battle between fear and recognition, between the safety of silence and the terrible responsibility of speech. "Lyrian," Alex said softly, stepping toward her despite the energy currents that made the air itself seem alive. "Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're remembering, you don't have to face it alone." She turned toward him, and in her violet eyes he saw depths of knowledge and sorrow that spoke of lives lived across millennia, of connections severed and consciousness scattered across the galaxy like seeds on stellar winds. When she finally spoke, her voice carried harmonics that perfectly complemented the crystal resonances, as if she had been born to be the missing frequency in a cosmic symphony. "Where have you been until now, human?" she whispered, her words clear despite the overwhelming harmonics surrounding them. "I have been waiting so long for someone who could hear the call, someone whose mind could bridge the gap between what was lost and what could be again." Alex felt the weight of recognition settle around him like a mantle he'd been unconsciously preparing to wear his entire life. "You're not just able to speak," he said with growing understanding. "You're the key. The harmonic frequency that can restore the galactic consciousness network." "We are the key," Lyrian corrected, reaching out to take his hand. "Your knowledge of how the ancient patterns connect, combined with my ability to channel the restoration frequencies, together we can rebuild what was broken." The moment their hands touched, the temple's crystal formations blazed with unprecedented intensity. Alex felt knowledge flowing between them, her inherited understanding of harmonic consciousness merging with his analytical understanding of linguistic evolution. The combination created something entirely new, a hybrid awareness that could perceive the galaxy as a living network of interconnected consciousness. The network wasn't destroyed, Alex realized, data flowing through their shared connection faster than thought. It was dormant, waiting for the right combination of understanding and harmonic resonance to reawaken it. Each world that developed the ancient symbols retained a fragment of the whole, Lyrian explained, her voice growing stronger as the harmonics stabilized around them. "But fragments cannot sing the galaxy's song alone. They need a conductor, a focal point that can help them remember how to harmonize across the void." Working together, they began to modulate the harmonic frequencies, Alex providing the technical understanding while Lyrian channeled the emotional resonance needed to establish connections across galactic distances. The monastery's crystals became focusing elements, amplifying their combined efforts and sending harmonic pulses toward distant worlds where similar crystal formations had remained dormant for millennia. "It's working," Brother Thane breathed, watching as the chaotic energy patterns began to organize into stable harmonic matrices. "The crystals are stabilizing, but they're also singing. Singing to something far away." Alex felt the moment when their efforts reached critical mass, when the restoration harmonics achieved the resonance needed to reawaken consciousness networks across dozens of star systems. Through their shared awareness, he could sense other worlds beginning to respond, crystal formations on distant planets blazing to life as they remembered their purpose, isolated civilizations suddenly hearing the echo of a cosmic song they had thought lost forever. "We did it," he whispered, watching as the temple's harmonics settled into patterns of sustainable resonance. We actually restored the network. Lyrian smiled, her face radiant with joy and exhaustion in equal measure. No, she said softly, we began it. The network will take time to fully re-establish, connections to rebuild, civilizations to remember how to sing together across the void. But the song has started again. She squeezed his hand, and Alex felt through their bond the certainty that this was only the beginning of their partnership. They had become something new, not just human and ethereal, but the living bridge between ancient wisdom and modern understanding, the conductors of a galactic symphony that would reshape the future of consciousness itself. Around them, the monastery's crystals pulsed with gentle harmonics that carried messages of hope toward distant stars, and Alex realized that his quest to understand linguistic evolution had become something far more profound, a chance to help the galaxy remember how to speak as one voice across the infinite spaces between worlds. The girl who had waited in silence for someone to hear her call had finally found her voice, and with it, the key to reuniting a scattered cosmos in songs of shared consciousness and boundless possibility.